Hi, everybody in the second shift community and beyond. I am Jenny Galluzzo and joined today by Sarah Lacy, the founder of ChairmanME, and Catherine Valentine, who is going to lead us in a negotiation seminar based on the idea that women aren't awesome negotiators. And I have lots of theories on this, but one of the things and why this is so important right now is because this is the moment when companies are really open to negotiation on salary. There's nearly 4% of wages are being put aside for payroll is being put aside for wages in 2022. So this is the moment when everyone needs to get their self-confidence and teach themselves how to negotiate like a girl so that we can make sure that there is pay equity moving forward and you are not leaving what some say is up to $1 million over your career lifetime on the table by not negotiating properly for yourself. So I want to introduce Sarah Lacy and Catherine Valentine. Thank you so much for coming here. First, I'd love to know about ChairmanME. How did it come about and what is ChairmanME? What should we know? And thank you so much for offering the second shift a discount on this seminar that will be, we're getting a tiny little bit of it, but it will be a much bigger program that kicks off on January 24th.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. This is such a pleasure. Sorry. I don't know what that is. Give me one sec.
We're all used to it.
We have a new alarm system. The dog. So that's very appropriate for all of our Zoom melded lives. Thank you so much for having us. This is a topic that I'm so passionate about. Catherine is so passionate about. So it's kind of been a passion explosion around this. So we just, as many people as we can sort of get the message to, the better. Catherine will get more into this in a minute. It's actually not that women are bad negotiators. Women are actually great negotiators. They tell themselves they're bad negotiators because it is a gender stacked game. And they don't realize going into a negotiation that they are walking into a gender milestone that is no fault of theirs, is a fault of the patriarchy. And what's so brilliant about Catherine's framework and strategy, which is rooted in decades of research, is that there is a way to get around it. And there is a way to actually sidestep the double bind and use all of that to your advantage. So I just want to be clear in case anyone heard that and was like, I'm not a bad negotiator. No, you're not.
I love that. I want to blame the patriarchy for everything because then it gives you the self-confidence and the ability to just be like, yeah, well, I'm going to stick it to the patriarchy. So now I'm going to go out and do it. And like, F that.
Well, and I mean, the patriarchy is to blame for everything. So it's convenient for your desires.
Thank you, Sarah.
Otherwise, we'd be paid equally. But anyway, we'll get to all that in a second. I want to answer your question about ChairmanME, but I knew that Catherine was like jumping out of her skin and she's too polite to butt in and say, no, women aren't bad negotiators. So ChairmanME was actually started as a company called Chairman Mom. Those were the two titles I was the most proud of, being a mom and also being chairman of my own business. Less than 2% of venture capital goes to female founders, and they are usually not the chairman and CEO of their business. In fact, even at the Fortune 500 level, and this gets into negotiation, most women who are given the top CEO job are not given the chairman job. There is still another man they're answering to. So I think those two titles are super important to me. They summed up my accomplishments in life, and I felt like the two of them together made me stronger versus having an ambitious career making me a worse mother, or being a mother and as a single mother for quite a while made me somehow worse at my job, which was sort of what the patriarchy had told me since I was a young child. So ChairmanME was really started to be a community that reframed working motherhood as exactly what I think it is, something incredibly ambitious and badass that somehow we've let the world gaslight us into believing is a weakness or is something to be ashamed of or something to hide. And we wanted to create a place online that was basically the opposite of the rest of the internet for badass working women, meaning there's no judgment, there's no trolling, there's no gaslighting you that the things that you're experiencing, you're not experiencing. And during 2020, we really went deep with our, we were an online community. We did some online events, some real life events. We had a really incredible question and answer forums. But we went really deep with our community in COVID when women were really completely hosed in ways that they had never been before, to understand what they needed both emotionally but also tactically in order to work out of this time stronger. Because it was really a time when I think most people who were ChairmanME members already sort of are fed up with the world and what the world is telling them, and they're done drinking like the patriarchy Kool-Aid, and like they're ready for change. Like something like 60% of our audience is in the middle of making a major life change that they were either scared to do or putting off before joining ChairmanME. So we already had a lot of people who were taking action, but I think, COVID was really a point where women were like, okay, whatever we thought was working for us, whatever solution bundle we thought we had cobbled together to make life doable, clearly isn't. And this world does not have our back, and we need to figure out something else. So part of what that led to was this incredible series of online courses that get you in and out, and you build real tactical skills designed for your life. The homework is not theoretical. You are graduating these courses in 6 to 8 weeks, having learned an incredible new skill. And not only that, the skill is optimized for the unfair world and the unfair playing field you're competing on. So I sort of scour the earth for the most incredible people on each topic. A lot of the requests come from our community. Negotiation was one of them, because people were finding exactly what Catherine's seen in her research, that they're high performers. They're going in, they're following all of the advice the business school says to follow. And then they're asking, like, women in our community are asking. There's a lot of research that shows that women don't ask as much. That gap is getting closed. Women are asking all day long. They're just not getting what men are getting. And so I was like, there's got to be a solution to this. And then I found Catherine. So I'm so excited, because we're going to have about, 30 to 50 women in this course. And on average, Catherine gets paid $1,000 plus an hour as a negotiation coach. And she gets women on average about 30% increase in salary. And salary isn't even everything. She details a list of about 60 things that women can be asking and negotiating for. So these 30 to 50 women are going to come out of this course in 6 weeks. And I can't wait to see what the outcomes are by the end of next year, but it's going to be pretty life-changing for them.
I love it. Welcome, Catherine. I just would love to know quickly I would love to know your backgrounds so we can find out more about you. I mentioned this before, but I just want to launch it really quickly because I've never done this before. So we're just going to send this out to the group. So at some point in time, if everyone can just tell me where they came to the second shift from, because I am just really curious to find out how you found out about this. Is it through ChairmanME? Is it through the newsletter? We just launched on TikTok. How are people finding this? Because this is really well attended, and I really love this topic so much. I think it's really near and dear to our hearts. This is an area where a lot of women lose the confidence to go after and ask for what they're worth. And particularly with the second shift community, where so many of our members are freelancers or consultants or in between jobs, I think there's a devaluation of what you're worth because you think you're getting something on the other side for it, which might be your freedom or the ability to be home with your kids. And that isn't necessarily going to put you on par with what you would have earned if you were a man in the same position, asking for the same thing with the same experience. So changing that mindset is really important. And I've seen even women who are top of their fields questioning what they should be asking for and if it's too much. So Catherine, tell me a little bit about you and your experience and the research you've done. I'm really curious to dive into where you come to this program from.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is what I want to talk about all day long, all the time.
Me too.
And so, right. And so a forum to talk about it with like-minded people is always just such a treat. Where I come from is I spent 15 years as kind of, as a W-2, 10 years as a W-2 employee, and then 5 years as a freelancer and independent consultant. What I learned, I had a negotiation go poorly, even though I kind of followed the book of how to do one. And so I spent a year in business school studying how to negotiate specifically as a woman. And I did it under one of the top female negotiators in the world. She's on retainer from, Google and Google, Facebook, they all have her on retainer. She does typically multi-billion-dollar merger and acquisition negotiations. And so I studied under her about how to negotiate specifically as a woman. And what I discovered under that sort of year-long project was, one, there is a lot of good academic research in this area. I expected it to be one of those things where, we didn't know much. We actually know a lot. The second thing that I learned is that all of these studies, whether they're out of Harvard, Columbia, Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, all are saying the same thing. It's not ambiguous. There's a very clear way to negotiate as a woman that allows you to sidestep the double bind and get better negotiated outcomes and be ranked higher on leadership and likability. And so now what we see with some of our sort of varsity women negotiators who kind of started this with me a few years ago is that now they want to create an opportunity to negotiate because that's an opportunity to showcase their skills, which they know will not only get them more of what they need to be successful, but will actually allow them to get promoted faster to make more because they're allowed to showcase what they can do in an environment that isn't typically an opportunity for women to shine. And actually, one thing that you said about your community really stuck with me, which is that maybe, is it okay if I share the screen and share this research real quick?
We would love to see any slides and anything you have prepared. I'm literally like dorking out and taking notes. So
okay, well, if you can give me permission to share. Right now, I'm not a host.
Yeah, sorry.
And while you're doing that, I'll just say, when you were saying, women are like, well, but I'm getting this flexibility and I'm getting this experience. And I hear that all the time. I've heard that out of my own brain. Catherine said something amazing when we were filming for the course, which was like, that is really internalized oppression speaking. Like Warren Buffett is living in Omaha, has a very low cost of living, and is not saying, oh my God, they're letting me work remotely, so I should really take less money. Like that, there's no man that has ever said those things when they've been allowed to have flexibility, when they've been allowed to have any of these things. And ever since she said that, I like hear that. I hear her voice in my head every time I think those things or hear another woman say it.
It's very true and very sad. And also it's just like so gendered, but just is part of it. I'm so glad we're busting this open.
But the good news is like, there's a solution. There's so many things that we try to tackle or we're like, there's not a solution. Like this is one where there is. Sorry, I'm gonna stop talking. Catherine.
So optimistic. Catherine, you take over. You got the permissions and
and Jenny, help guide me, right? So I want to tailor this towards your audience. The other thing that came to mind when you were talking.
This is all fascinating. Every single thing you're saying is fascinating. And I think just part of it is the mental game of it. And also like tactically, what are the things you're saying? There's a very specific like tactical protocol people can follow to have a positive outcome. I am game.
Well, why don't we do this? What if we spend a couple minutes on the mental game, kind of what is standing in our way, that internalized oppression sort of messages that we've taken, and then we'll go into solutions. Does that work for you?
Love it. Love a solution.
So the one thing that I'm thinking about when you talk about your community is I did a negotiation with a woman named Whitney who had been a freelancer for 4 years because she found that like her corporate America job did not fit her family. So she was a freelancer for 4 years, and then they had some trouble getting pregnant. And so benefits became very important to her. And so she wanted to go back as a W-2. And when I talked to her, was ready to take a 30% hit to do that. By the time we kind of went through this material, she now is in a job where she makes twice as much per hour as she did as a freelancer. The company has her working 25 hours a week. They do not ask her to work more, but if they do, she makes 3 times as much for anything over 25 hours. And she negotiated an 18-week maternity leave, which is twice as long as what they normally give people. And I think what I see kind of in her and some other negotiations I've done with, I can talk to you about Jen or Nicole, who are all kind of doing that sort of working mom or working caretaker thing, is that the research would show that there's a perceived value thing that's going on. So let me see, let's kind of, maybe this is a good time to go into an activity here. Can you see my screen? Okay, let me pop you over to this one. And I don't know if we have chat enabled. So if you can't chat me, just, think on your own, but
People can write Q&As and things, and I can be the voice because I don't think that they have the ability to speak out. So I'll if you have anything that you want to ask, say, comments, put in the Q&A and I'll be your voice.
love that. So one exercise I go through with my clients is looking at this. I spent quite a while doing consumer product goods and doing a lot of pricing strategy for that. So if you look at this, which mascara do you think that the typical customer thinks is best?
I think I use the one that's the most expensive.
Right. So do you think the best one is the
Mine,
$6 one?
actually.
Oh, your actual one. Well,
Actually, my mascara.
well, there we go. Then you clearly think the $48 one is best, right? I'm seeing if anyone answers in the Q. I don't know how to do.
I know the answer.
Generally speaking,
I would never buy the $6 one because I hate the phrase cool girl. I find it really misogynistic after Gone Girl. I'm probably not the average. That's probably not the average answer you're looking for.
by the way, Sarah, I'm currently rereading your book, and I love it when you talk about when I was like in the cool Sarah Lacy phase.
I'm impressionable. I'll just be like, oh, somebody told me it's the best. So then I bought it. But Betty.
Well over 99% of customers are like you, right? That's what we assume. We assume a one-to-one of price and value. Where I want to mention this to your audience is the same thing is true in terms of your salary. So this is research from Pinkley and Northcroft, but what they find is that applicants with identical experience and performance records, but different salaries, are rated differently by employers. So your compensation is what signals your value. Accepting less than what you're worth implies that you have less value than those you're actually equal to. And so what I love about this is something we can change, right? And I think that knowing, and I used to do this. I used to do well, if they're going to let me work home one day a week, then that's worth 10% to me and whatever. That's false math. We do not have to do that. Where that comes from actually is sort of this. Jenny, I'm trying to customize this real time for what you got for your audience. Let me run you through the benefits of negotiating, right? So the one that we always think about is the financial benefit. So research out of Stanford shows that if you choose not to negotiate, you will need to work for 8 more years to retire in the same place as you would if you had negotiated. I can personally say that I was raised by a single mom who chose not to negotiate, which, given everything that she was in and under and the time and all of that, I understand that. As a result of that, she found out when she retired that she made over the course of her career $3 million less than the men she worked with. Keep in mind, these are men that she often got promoted faster than and certainly did better than. And so what we're seeing is that, that $1 million thing is tossed out. And I would say that that's I love that number because it allows us to see it. In my research, it's actually higher. So this is kind of a theoretical of what becoming a negotiator could mean for you. And in this case, we see that it's worth $2.2 million before you negotiate. I actually just finished a customized negotiation calculator where you can enter in your age, your salary, and what you want to negotiate, and it will tell you what that amount is worth by the time that you retire. So Jenny, maybe I'll send that to you and you can share it with your community if you want to.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've stayed up way too late at night playing around with it, right?
Fascinating.
The second reason you want to negotiate is because of that perceived value. It really does. We have so much flying around these days. People hold on to data points and use them to extrapolate things. This is the data point that people hold on to extrapolate your value. The other reason you want to negotiate is because it increases your professional success. So what we see is this sort of fortunate cycle, right? Where if you negotiate, then you're able to deliver more. If you deliver more, then you're able to negotiate more. And you see that going on and just helping and supporting women. The point I want to make here is that one of the fallacies in thinking is that you can only negotiate. 70% of women, when you say negotiation, think of salary. You can negotiate literally hundreds of things. So this is a list of items that I've helped women negotiate or seen women negotiate. I'll give you, maybe I'll pop a link into the chat at the end of this, so you don't have to, scribble it all down. I'll give you a link so that you can have it emailed to you. But what we see is that this not only, helps you level up financially, but it actually helps you, it lowers your stress. It helps you become more productive and happier. And if we think about what that means as a worker, not only are we better mothers, partners, people, we're actually better workers. And so the women who negotiate these things then tend to get promoted faster to those next levels. And if you want to like double click on some of this, I mean, we've done negotiations where, a woman got a job offer but couldn't move her family. So she negotiated staying in the same place for multiple years. We've done a negotiation where a woman was a caretaker for older parents. Got an offer, again, was not willing to move because so much of her life revolved around kind of their end of living care. And so she negotiated a great deal where the company bought her an apartment in the city where they are, and she's there 2 days a week, right? For other people, we've negotiated things like long maternity leaves or onboarding. The world misses the benefit of onboarding women after caretaking or whatever, right? We can negotiate a great onboarding plan for you where you work 50% as much for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, because it costs the company a lot to lose you. As a freelancer, what I'm seeing people negotiate is certainly their pay, but also what they will do and what they won't do. Because after you've been a freelancer for a while, kind of where those pitfalls are. And so negotiating away like, oh, and by the way, I don't do X or I don't do Y. I also had a woman recently negotiate. The company was asking her to do a lot for what she was charging them. And they indicated that they had no budget space to move. And so she just negotiated that one of the people from the company would work for her. And that allows her to get a lot more done at no extra cost to her. And it allowed the company to meet that budget.
What I think is, just to jump in real quickly, what I think is so exciting when we were doing the module for the course on this is you start to see that this isn't about, man, I kind of hate this job. I hate the emotional labor. I'm missing out on so much with my kids, so I should get more money. And somehow that compensates me for the things that suck. Like, that's kind of how I thought of negotiation, especially if you're working at a big company or working a really demanding schedule. Instead, what Catherine really guides you to do is, yes, get more money, because we should see also the Warren Buffett example earlier, but also set yourself up for success. Say, no, I'm not going to do that. Or no, we're not going to do the Monday meeting at 5 o'clock. Or I am in like an elite swim group that competes at this. That is my unicorn space. That's what I care about. So I'm not available then. I need a team. I need an assistant. Why do men statistically have bigger teams for the level that they're at within a company? There are so many things that we have just either been gaslit not to think we can ask for because we feel so grateful for the promotion or the seat at the table or the 6-figure salary, or we haven't seen it because we're not in these old boy networks rooms. And like maybe the other women at the company were these silent martyrs, or there haven't been other women at the company and there's been no one to pull us aside and be like, you need an assistant, ask for assistant, they'll give you one. So it's like, it's not just about getting more to offset and to make up for the unfairness. It's really about asking for all these things that will make you the star performer so that then the next time you go in, you can ask for even more. And it's basically like building your squad to make your metrics so much better that then the next negotiation is that much easier. And as Catherine was teaching this course and I was, video editing it and putting together, it sort of dawned on me, this is not just about a method of negotiation, which she'll get into in a second as sort of a teaser. You know, I mean, it takes, you know, 6 weeks to kind of really build this out for yourself, but definitely like she can get into some of the science about the approach, but it's not just about that approach, which I already thought was pretty revolutionary and wish I had known in my 20s. It is also about the practice of constant negotiation. You are constantly in this dialogue with your boss. And if you master this approach, which sidesteps the competent versus likable bind that women are usually in when we ask, as Catherine says, you can ask all day long and you do not suffer backlash. So suddenly you can be a white man who just every day is asking for stuff, and you don't have to sit back and think, well, is now the time to ask? Is this the time I want to pick my shot? What is going to be the backlash? Am I going to be seen as uppity? What you can just flush all of that from your mind and be the white man who asks and asks and asks and asks. And the more you ask and the more you get, as Catherine said, it's this virtuous cycle. You're perceived as more competent. You're perceived as someone they can't lose. Your marketability. You notice when we came on this call, I said she gets paid $1,000 an hour. Why did I say that? First of all, because it's true and it's impressive and go Catherine. Second of all, because that makes you think, oh my God, she's for real. So it's like this virtuous cycle and flywheels. As you get more team, you get more staff, you get more responsibility, you're delivering more. That's what's making you get 30 to 70% more salary over the course of your career and millions of dollars more. It's all of those things you've asked for. So it's not just, I want to be in my kid's soccer game. This would be nice. It's how am I setting myself up for success on an uneven playing field to keep making these asks and keep making, it's like a yoga practice. This is a negotiation practice. This is a career skill we have not built. And if you unlock this skill, it is not something you use once a year. It is something you use daily. That was, to me, what was mind-blowing about this course that I had never heard anyone say to me.
I have a question. And just when we're talking about, like, you know, we have, like I said, we have lots of freelancers and consultants. Something else that we have a lot of are people who are either in career transition. Again, another pitfall where you think, well, if I went from doing this thing and now I'm doing this thing, then I should take less money. I don't have the experience. I'm looking, you know, all of the thoughts and things that you can talk yourself out of. So the career transitioners and the people who have had a resume break. Those are also two very large areas that people devalue themselves and take themselves out of the track of like, well, then I can't ask for X, or it's not the right time, or if I then. So I'm just wondering how that plays into the research that you're seeing and how people should think about that.
I love this question. Men don't do that, right? So when they transition from I was in product and now I'm in finance, what they come in, they don't come in and say, well, I know I don't know X, Y, and Z. They come in and say, your team doesn't know these things about product. I know these things about product, and your team's going to be so much stronger because I'm going to be able to help lift them all by helping them understand how to work with product and what the implications are of product and all that stuff, right? So I think, again, this is sort of the internalized degrading of ourselves, which is not factually true. So many of those skills, not only, you know, people say, well, the skills are transferable. Well, yes, and they make you better because the other people that you're going to be working with kind of know the same thing that you know, right? But what they don't know is what makes you different. What they don't know is what you learned from 10 years of marketing or from, you know, working in education or from whatever else it might be, right? So that's my point for the career transitioners. For the resume break people, there are, I mean, if you look at Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates takes like his think week to not work and to go reflect on everything that's happening, right? When we are in it, we don't often see, we can't see the big picture. I mean, this is part of the value of consultants, right? Because when you're doing the job, you can't see the big picture, but when you bring a consultant in, they can. This is why I actually, like, despite having spent 10 years as a strategy consultant, have to have a consultant like doing strategy for me because I'm so in it, I can't see it. For those people who have the resume break, you stepped out of it so you can see it. And I think that, you know, we can talk about what the language would be to communicate that. You're going to tweak that language a little bit, but just to tell you, the woman who is the CEO of Lilly Pulitzer right now took 3 years off. In those 3 years, she was like, damn, e-commerce is kind of a thing, isn't it? We're not doing that. That's weird. And she came back and sat down with the CEO, who was multiple levels ahead of her at that point in time, and said, you know what I've noticed while I have my children at home and I'm feeding them, is that I can buy a lot of clothes online, but I can't buy our clothes online. And he was like, that's right. What should we do about that? And she's like, I want to take, like, will you pay me to spend 6 months toying around with e-commerce for us? This was in the early 2000s. And he was like, yes, I will. And she was like, great, I'll need to do that, in these 20 hours a week. And I'll also need 2 other people to work with me on it because I can't, the IT stuff is not where you want me to put my time. And he's like, that's right, you're right. And so we gave her, she saw something that no one else saw. He gave her that opportunity. And now, 15 years later, she's the CEO of Lilly Pulitzer, who, by the way, is killing it because of all of the things that she was able to bring. Another one I'll give you is the former CEO of Spanx, the one who, oh my God, put them on the map in terms of business wise. I think 5x their growth or something like that. And the way that she figured it out is she was shopping with her kids. She had been at Coke. She was a stay-at-home mom. She was shopping with her kids. She noticed things that Spanx could do better. And so, she called up the very famous founder. I actually think she might have run into her at a Bloomingdale's, but somehow she crossed paths with Sarah and said, hey, I love your business. Here are the things I noticed could be better. And Sarah was like, great, you want to come run it? And she was like, yes, I do. Right. So I think that we don't give ourselves credit, and men try to find those timeouts, right? We don't give ourselves credit for what we see during that. Forget the fact that I need to point out that like 90% of spending or something like that's done by women. Right. So to understand that, to be fully immersed in that mindset is a huge value add to companies.
And I would just add to that, like, it's not even for e-commerce businesses alone. Who's the CEO of YouTube? Susan Wojcicki. She has 5 children. She was the one who actually wrote Google's leave program and drove them to have, industry leading leave, because every time she took a longer maternity leave, she had major epiphanies about the business because she had that headspace. So like YouTube isn't even like, it's not Spanx. It's not a product that's designed for women, but she had those insights just because of being away and having that time, and also not being forced to be in a situation that was unfair. 85% of women in this country do not have the luxury of taking paid leave. What does that do to their, like what a self-sabotaging thing for companies to do? Because Google gave her the flexibility to take incredibly long leaves, her career leveled up every time she had a baby. So this is like, you may be listening to this thinking like, well, I don't work in yoga pants. It's like, it doesn't have to be a woman-centric business. It's just, there's so many ways that the patriarchy wants to disable us. Don't give them more ammo. Don't give them the talking points, because magic word for anyone with a resume gap, sabbatical. Men take sabbaticals all the time. Call it a sabbatical. It is mysteriously not time off with your kids.
So Jenny, I can take you through maybe what the biggest barrier is to women negotiating, and then talk about the research solution a little bit. But before I do that, is there anything in particular you would like to talk about or that would be helpful for your community?
No, I think that going through the solution is going to be really helpful. I noticed it's, we've got about 20 minutes left. So let's talk solution. We all know the problem. Them in our gut. We know it all the time.
Okay, so I actually, I am going to spend just a minute on what the problem is, because it takes different manifestations. And I think that when you recognize what's happening, you then have allowed yourself to remove the emotions and decide what the right path is. So the most common sort of roadblocks I hear are concern about what others will think. They're going to think I'm greedy. They're going to think I'm entitled. They're going to think I'm whatever, right? Which was, by the way, my number one. That was always my concern. Concern it's a career limiting move. I'm not really sure, but I don't know what's going to happen if I have that conversation. Fear of hearing no, not sure how to do it authentically. A lot of what we've learned about negotiation is a very male-centric, aggressive sort of situation that, is not what I'm going to choose to put myself in. I don't want to do that. And so not sure how to navigate that authentically. And then the last one sometimes is this rational calculation. What these all, and they have different variations, but what they all come together in is this underlying fear of backlash. Where that comes from is that we're primed from childhood to put others first. By the way, men are primed from childhood in agency, this idea that they can influence and affect the world. We are primed to respond to what has happened, to respond to the baby crying, to respond to somebody being hungry, to respond. And by the way, that helps us become very empathetic, which is a strength of mine that I love. But it does slowly every day help shave off our ability to recognize that we influence the world around us. We impact the world around us. We can create that life that we love. What I love about the research and the clear solution is that it takes the risk of backlash to virtually zero. And that's an academic term, which means like actually zero, right? Like this is the bar for this research is incredibly high, which I think makes it really good. Jenny, any thoughts on that before I jump into kind of what the solution might be?
I just noticed all of those bullet points also, like you said, backlash, but it also just makes me so sad because it's clearly coming from a place of like fear and insecurity and low self-worth, which is just so disappointing that that's what women think about themselves.
Well, and I think, Jenny, it's not what we want to think about ourselves, right? But I think about, I went, after I came out of business school, I went back to a former employer. At that point in time, since I'd left them, I had run a P&L, managed a large team, gone to business school, and worked for a client, right? So now I'm coming back around. I am incredibly valuable to them. And I allowed myself to be put into the same level as 24-year-olds who had worked for them for 2 years. That was wrong. That was, you know what, my bad. Because of that, I end up leaving the company 6 months later. If they had seen the difference and pointed it out, or if I had believed in all of the additional value I was bringing and had pointed out to them, they would have rectified it and I would probably still be there, right? And so I just think that sometimes it's, we undervalue ourselves, but sometimes it is just so freaking absorbed in the air that we breathe that even someone that spent a year studying this one thing still did it, right?
I mean, this is why we need a community. And this is why we need a community, and this is why we need coaches, right? Because it's like that conditioning since birth is so strong, but it's like you think about how you talk to yourself versus how you talk to your best friend. I mean, this is what's so powerful about, a course like this, where it's like you have 30 other people who are kind of going through it with you, who can be like, hold up, do you remember what we just talked about last week? I mean, like we see this all the time in ChairmanME courses. It's not just like the access to the incredible instructor and the, 12, 15 hours a week of Catherine's time that people are going to get. It's the community around you, because we can all see these things with others. Like just as you're saying right now, Jenny, I hate when I see this in my community. I think it makes me so sad. I'm sure you've done it to yourself. Like I think of myself as such a like obnoxiously baller negotiator. Like when I was 28, I closed the second biggest book deal in Business Week history. And I was like the lowest paid journalist in Silicon Valley. Like I'm pretty aggro with negotiation. And this course has like exploded even what I thought I could ask for. And you just frequently need that person next to you to be like, let me point out what you're doing to yourself, because you're pointing out what I'm doing to myself. And I think that's honestly 90% of the answer here.
In life.
In life.
Yeah. Okay, Catherine, go right ahead. I don't want to, but we could talk about this forever. So let's get down to the topic.
Well, Jenny, what I'm just thinking is like, dang, what would have happened if I had either of y'all's communities when this was happening, right? Like kudos to this new wave that's coming down. Okay, so research is going to point to, 2 principles for negotiating successfully as a woman. The first one is going to be to take a collaborative approach. The second one is going to be to ask communally. Taking a collaborative approach is actually kind of the new way of negotiating. It is particularly beneficial to women. So if you think of the old way to negotiate, right? It was like you versus me, there's a winner and a loser. We're locked into this. That is disproportionately disadvantages women for a number of reasons. Now what's being taught in negotiation from, Harvard's program on negotiation, all the best business schools, whatever, is this new collaborative approach. If you want to learn more about that, I highly recommend the book Getting to Yes. It's very, very good. This collaborative approach is now how people are negotiating like peace treaties, right? We know that this is a better way to negotiate. We also know that this is a better way for women to negotiate. Men can be equally successful using either approach. Women are significantly more successful when they negotiate collaboratively. And so we know that this is what we want to do. And there's resources out there on how to learn this. The second piece is to ask communally. What blows my mind is that there are not any resources out there to do this. Not only are there not any resources out there to teach you to do this, but a lot of sort of the typical advice that is given is wrong for women. So the Wall Street Journal ran an article 2 Tuesdays ago about how this year was the best year to ask for a raise. And in it, they quoted a couple of negotiation experts who said things like, say, I deserve that raise, or I would like that to be reflected in my pay. If you as a woman do that, you will statistically be more likely to suffer backlash than not. So I am going to beg you to not do that. Like, I would rather you do nothing, honestly, than do that. And by the way, there's no gender disclaimer in this article. There's no, oh, by the way, we've noticed that this is, this is actually written for men, how men can negotiate better, right? This is just not talked about. It's not even talked about in business schools where more than 50% of the incoming class are now female, right? Like, this is the big miss by society. This is the reason why, like, I am not a negotiations PhD. I'm a consultant. I am an apparel executive, but I left those things to do this because no one is talking about this. And doing this, asking communally, is the way that you eliminate the risk of backlash, which enables you to ask for what you need to be successful and to highlight how much you can bring, and frankly, how much companies are missing by not being able to leverage the power of women like us.
So what do those mean? Ask communally and take a collaborative approach. What is that? How does that, can you break those two things down?
I can. I will say, take a collaborative approach is like a semester-long class at all business schools,
Yeah.
right? So I can kind of break it down, but it's not gonna be perfect.
I would assume that this is all things that where you go through during your actual class, which takes place over multiple weeks.
Right. So I'll give you the high level, and then after the high level, hopefully it'll be enough to be like, okay, I can dig it.
Like, how do you define that a little bit?
Yeah. So part one is the collaborative approach. When you negotiate competitively, it's about you. It's kind of a you versus them. I need a raise. They don't want to give you a raise. I need more people. They don't want to get right. It's contrary to what society expects from women because it is very aggressive. But more importantly, most women report feeling uncomfortable or inauthentic. Like they just don't want to negotiate this way, which means they choose not to negotiate sometimes. It's also less effective. So what we're seeing now in the new research is that women are negotiating as often as men, but they're successful half as often. And what that tells me is that, sort of the business gurus have been great at encouraging women to negotiate, but pardon my French, shit at teaching them how to negotiate as a woman. And so the competitive thing we don't want to, collaboratively is when it's going to be us versus the problem. So for example, I worked with somebody recently who was thinking about leaving the company that she'd been at for, 10 or 15 years. She happened to get another offer from another company that was offering her like 40% more. Instead, her first take was, I'm going to go in, I'm going to throw the offer on his desk, and I'm going to tell my boss he needs to deal with it. And it's like, ooh, maybe not. Just statistically speaking, maybe not. So what she ended up doing is she walked in and she said, Bob, as you know, I've been here for 15 years. I love being here. Last year, my team overachieved our goal by 15%. We're on track to do it again this year. However, I've been surprised by receiving another offer. And what really kind of took me back is that they offered me 40% more than what I make here. I want to stay here, right? Like, I love being here. I love my team. I can get a lot done here. So I'm wondering if you can help me close that gap so that I can continue to contribute here. As soon as she did that, what Bob did was like, holy shit, I can't believe they're trying to poach you. I can't believe it. So Bob then offered her 50% more to stay, right? And so what we see with a collaborative negotiation is it really plays to women's strengths of being that team player. Like, let's together solve this problem. The other big thing with collaborative, which I'll just throw in here, I worry because I'm now going to dive deep and then come back up. But the other thing with collaborative is you never want to negotiate just one thing. You always want to negotiate multiple issues, because let's say I'm negotiating a car. If I just negotiate on price, we're inherently in a competitive negotiation. But if I go in and I negotiate on price and color and the extra add-ons, and even when I'll purchase it to help his numbers and whatever, now we can work together collaboratively. So Jenny, I realize that this is like 100,000 level,
No, that's so good, and now explains exactly why I didn't get the price I wanted on the car and failed in that negotiation. So
I tell you, this is what I love about this is it's like everything that Catherine teaches is so applicable, whether or not you're trying to get your kids to do something or buy a house. Like it's not just about being a W-2 employee, and it's even more important for consultants because you negotiate way more. But Catherine got like 15% off her house because of negotiating this way. I mean, it's truly almost a magic trick once you kind of figure it out.
now so annoyed at myself. Okay, continue. I know this is great. Let's move on. Do you want to move on to the communally? What an example of that?
My favorite part about this though is it's a magic trick that helps everybody, right? So when I negotiated my car, I negotiated multiple things. And the end of it, the salesman who gave me, I think I got 20% off my house and 15% off the car, but who gave me a big bump was like thanking me because I'd done him such a solid, right? And you're like, you're welcome.
Intuitive for women, because this is how I work in an all women's company. We are all women. We deal with a lot of women, and this is how we internally negotiate things because it's how it feels natural. And so I can see how when you write, it feels uncomfortable or inauthentic because that's not really, I mean, maybe there are some women who do feel authentic doing that, but I feel like this version of collaboratively working through something is more along the lines of how women already are negotiating amongst themselves and in life.
I just want to say one thing before we get to communal ask that I think is like important to point out. Why is it that it feels inauthentic? Like think about the brain science connected to survival that drives our comfort level. So what's happening is you have internalized the backlash that you've gotten your whole life, whether it's over a grade, whether it's at home about having as late a curfew as your brothers, whatever it is, you've internalized that backlash that you got from having to engage competitively. So the reason it feels inauthentic, the reason that you start, sort of sweating and feeling a little sick in your stomach is your like survival brain, the neuroscience of your brain knows you're going into a dangerous situation where something is at risk. So it's not that in an equal world, like, there's something about me being a woman or having an X chromosome that means I can't, competitively negotiate. That feeling inauthentic is because we know in our gut, because our brain has taken in thousands more points of data than our conscious brain can actually like wrap our heads around. Our body is sending us a signal of danger, danger, danger. There's going to be backlash, and our brain is entirely wired for survival. And it views a threat in the workplace or even being ostracized as the same threat as a dinosaur eating you. Like that's just the evolutionary brain science. So it's like, just to point out, if people are listening to this, like, what, I can do anything. I'm like, it's not you. It's not that you can't do it. It's not that, there probably are women who are more comfortable with that style. I probably am someone who's more comfortable with that style. I'm super combative by nature, but my brain has internalized and is trying to keep me safe. So there's neurology here that's driving why this works more for women in addition to the research.
All right, let's move on because I know we're going to run out of time and I don't want to waste your whole day. Somebody asked, when do you walk away from a negotiation? So I'd love to just walk through this and then end on that.
Okay, great. So this is, and as you've seen, there's a ton of content here. In order to make it helpful in a few minutes, I'm just going to focus on kind of the big takeaway. And the big takeaway is the formula to create a communal ask is talk about your past accomplishments, the future vision, the ask, and then stop. And there is not only a double click on each of these, but like a quadruple click on each of these, right? Everyone has nuances. Everyone needs to be practiced. But that is actually like how you can do that. The big thing for me is once you do that, what that means is that women can overcome the threat of backlash by framing their negotiations this particular way, which means that now the cost to us asking is zero. And when the cost to us asking is zero, we can ask for anything that would help us be happier, more productive, more successful, more financially, a bigger financial contributor, whatever you want it to be. Jenny, let me hop to that question. I'm trying to think of like let's take 40 hours of content and zoop, and
Well, I think that's great. I think that, honestly, do you want to end with when to walk away from a negotiation or what to do if you feel like you've failed? Not getting what you want? How do you rebound from that?
The way that you know when to walk away from negotiation is before the negotiation. And we have a 9-step process that we'll share. This is step number 3. Before the negotiation, you're going to set your target and reservation points. The reason why we do it before the negotiation is because in the negotiation, you get really emotional, right? Things bob and weave and move, and there's some mind tricks that get played and all that stuff. So before the negotiation, you say here and here. What then happens is once they hit that reservation point, once you're not going to get what that was, which is determined by your alternatives, again, a whole bunch of theory we go through later, that's when you walk away.
Okay.
If you predetermined it, you can take a timeout now and try and pull all the emotions out and say, okay, what are my alternatives? Like if this deal doesn't go, what is my other deal? But when I was an independent consultant, it was, okay, if these guys don't convert at this price with this team and this timeline with this start date, what are my alternatives? And it's like, oh, well, I also have these, and I can go through these guys to staff more things, and I can freelance for these guys. Or your alternative, maybe I don't have anything coming down the pipeline, but I have the hopes of something bigger and better coming down the pipeline, right? So based on what that alternative is, that enables you to set that reservation point at which you will walk away. And I want to just give a little bit, and maybe this is like a woman apology, but I want to give like a woman apology here, because that's not, that to give a helpful answer in a couple of minutes on that one is pretty challenging.
Oh, I think that's great. And honestly, we could go on forever on this topic. And part of the reason why you've created a multi-week program on this is because it's not an easy one-step fix. But I think we've gotten some really useful information, some advice, gotten our toes wet in the waters of negotiation, and really it's been mind-opening to me to see how so much of this is like what we think we should be doing, but then an emotionally reactive, and those two things combined are self-destructive in this way. And so rethinking it, retooling, processing it. I want to again tell people that this whole program is going to live on our blog, everything that we've talked about today. But on January 24th, next week, you will be launching your wider program through ChairmanME, and you have generously offered the second shift and anyone who comes to it through the second shift a discount. Obviously, there's so much to learn, and I don't think that while we can do this for an hour, you're going to get the real punch of what is get to the bottom of it, and really relearn to retool our mindset. So I think this is a huge value add to anyone, really not even in the workforce, in life. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being here. ChairmanME is such a great platform and a great community. Sarah, congratulations on everything. And Catherine, you are a rock star.
She is incredible. And can I tell you like how I found Catherine? I had something in my course schedule saying negotiation, because it's something, and I kept finding people was like, this isn't giving answers. This isn't. And someone in our community who's taken about 4 courses over the last year called me and was like, I just saw this woman speak, and this is the person who needs to be the negotiator. I want every woman in the Chairman Mom community to have access to her. And, I just think like, especially with the discount as being part of second shift, you're essentially getting 12 to 15 hours of Catherine's time for the retail cost of 1 hour. And here's the thing, she's not even doing her coaching business anymore, because she's now doing so much work for large multinational corporations who are paying her even more for her to help women negotiate against them so they can retain the women. So it's like, this is really a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I hope we've probably got about 10 more slots. So hope some of your folks join, and you should join, Jenny.
Will you rerun it if it like fills up? Is this something that's one and done? I know, I don't.
We'll probably rerun it, but we won't rerun it this year. So if you want to make more money this year, you need to take the course. And I will tell you, like, all of the exercises and this multi-step process that Catherine's talked about, every week in office hours and every week in your homework, you're doing your own plan. So this isn't theoretical. You will graduate in 6 weeks and have a plan in action. And if you don't get what you're looking for, we will give you full credit for another Chairman Mom course. We take so seriously your time and money, and you will get the result that you want, or we will give you credit on another course. Like, we don't want to keep that money. That's how confident we are in this. And so it will be, 6 weeks of not theory, but you will, in that 6 weeks with your plan, you will have practiced your plan. You will be ready to go. I can't wait to see what comes out of it.
And Jenny, I just have to say, I am so excited by what you do. And also am like, in my mind is like, what would my life be like if this existed when I was a freelancer, right? And so one thing, maybe I can get your email from Sarah, but I want to make sure that your community gets that negotiation calculator that we talked about and access to that list. If there's anything else I think those are the two things we talked about, but if there's anything else, please let me know. I'm just so excited by what you're doing. Honestly.
I love this. This is like the best way to start a day. So I want to let everybody go back into their lives and go, sign up for this amazing class. And we'll put this on, I'll get this up online as fast as possible. Catherine will get you my email so that I can include that as well. Thank you. I loved this
so much. This was amazing.
Everybody. Bye, ladies.
Bye.